So today, my presentation, what I studied was how to best optimize a strategy for reestablishing native ecosystems in areas currently dominated by this particular species of vine called Euonymus Fortunei, uh, specifically in the context of Bloomington, Indiana. So for background, Euonymus Fortunei, or as it's commonly referred to, winter creeper, is an invasive plant that's kind of spread throughout the eastern U.S. and has become a pretty large problem. It's originally from East Asia. It was cultivated for ornamental purposes mostly, but from there it has spread into being a pretty major invasive species in the area. Here's a quote from the USDA Guide on Invasive Plants. Winter creeper is a vigorous vine that invades forest openings and margins. It grows across the ground, displacing herbaceous plants and seedlings, and climbs trees high into the tree canopy by clinging to the bark. So, just in like my life or walking around Bloomington, I've seen it in many places, including on my own home, because I grew up here and such. But it's all over the place, so it's a bit of an issue. So here we have some of the foliage pictured here, and here we have some that was originally looks like here for ornamental purposes, but has begun growing up the side of the building. This similar behavior to how it grows in the context of like a forest, how it grows it up, and this will eventually threaten the structural stability of that wall. So my claim is that looking at Bloomington's context and this research that I've looked at, the most effective strategy to manage and reestablish a native community where this euonymus is dominant would be an intensive initial removal via a combination of hand pulling and targeted herbicides, starting in areas where it could spread to other places easily to just kind of limit it generally, and then followed with immediate transplantation of seeds of native species into the previously occupied environment. So for my first piece of evidence, I have Smith and Reynolds 2015, where they grew a couple of native species together, and then they grew some euonymus and the native species together and observed how the plant species grow. And so what they found was that when the native plant species realized that they were not alone in their environment, they tended to limit their growth and only take up as much space as they could use. What the euonymus did is instead it just kept growing regardless. And so what the native plants exercise when interacting with each other is referred to as negative feedback. So it becomes a negative feedback loop. So they observe that each other are there and growing, so they stop. And instead of having a positive or a negative feedback loop, the euonymus just continues regardless. And this is a mechanism by which it can shade out plants that require more sun than it, because it can function in a wide range of light ranges, and they factored that in by including a gradient of light here. And so this appears to be one of the main mechanisms for its dominance as an invader. So that must be accounted for in our effort here. So in Flowery 2006, they performed an observational study where basically they looked at a bunch of different sites around central and southern Indiana and saw like how many invasive shrubs were around roadsides, because there's a lot of factors such as the nutrients in the soil, additional light, and wind created by cars that would lead to like roadsides being a particularly hospitable place for invasives to start enter into the ecosystem and from there spread. And so what they found here was that there was a decreasing density of shrubs in most of these places as you got further away from the road. And but they also found that there was no major difference in the successional age of the forest. So we won't really be working with that later on, but they just found that because of a number of factors. Roadsides are a place where these kinds of things spread well. So for my third piece of evidence, in Bauer 2015, scientists documented the effectiveness of various methods of restoring a native ecosystem that had a mono, and they tried to remove a monoculture of Euonymus. That this was in fact in the Dunn Woods of Indiana University. And so what their findings was that mulching was ineffective relative after this first year here. So this is the control group. This is mulching. This is hand pulling, and this is herbicide. And so from this graph, we can gather that herbicide and hand pulling were probably the most effective means of removing Euonymus. And they had some other things where they suggested using sprouted seedlings instead of just seeds, because they're already germinated, and they had a higher rate of success with that. But their efforts were overall limited by herbivory, the plants getting eaten, drought, and a windstorm that limited the success of their efforts. So combining all of this together, so to start off, where to start in this restoration effort, suggested by Flowery 06, to limit further spread of the Euonymus through the fertile roadside. You'd probably want to start on an area where there's Euonymus near a road. Start there and work into the forest is the best way to do that. And for the actual method of removal, you'd want a combination of hand pulling and targeted herbicide, where if you didn't have enough labor to pull off just pulling it all out by hand, which are both shown to be effective in Bauer 2015. And so basically you're doing that with the goal of removing as much as possible from the environment, so it can't really reestablish itself through the neutral soil feedback that was observed in Smith and Reynolds 2015. And as for the actual restoring part, a major factor that Bauer 2015 ran into was that the plants that they tried to plant were often eaten by local herbivores. And one of the most prolific herbivores in Bloomington, just from personal experience and observations generally, is white-tailed deer. And so I looked around for resources and found a fact sheet made by the city of Bloomington government, which has listed a bunch of different native plants that deer don't like to eat. So using that as a basis, I would suggest using this list as the particular species that we would start with planting. And as Bauer 2015 suggested, I would also want to use already sprouted seedlings rather than just throwing seeds out there, because of the benefits of them already being germinated. And given all the research that I've observed, this would be the optimal strategy for reestablishing native plant ecosystems in areas of Bloomington, Indiana, dominated by Euonymus Fortunei. Here are my sources. Thank you.